Okay, here we are with section 3. We're going to look at kind of summing everything up and looking at the short and long-term impacts that both the Great Depression and the New Deal had on the United States. I want to start off with showing you 3 pictures, and you're going to ask yourself, what do these pictures have to do with social studies and, more importantly, the Great Depression? All right, so here's picture number 1. Right, maybe a little too old for you, but your parents definitely know, and your grandparents definitely know, and some of you may know. Right, this is the original Wizard of Oz. All right, Dorothy with the lion, Scarecrow, and the Tin Man. Right, we all know that comic book character, and we all should know that comic book character as well. Now, these 3 pop culture icons all found their origins during the Great Depression. People were looking for some kind of escape, some kind of figure of hope, right? So these kind of became the ways that people took their minds off the Great Depression, right? Because they were able to kind of find some comfort in what these characters were doing, right? But we're going to start first by looking at the Dust Bowl. Now, you may think these pictures are photoshopped, right? But I assure you they are not, right? During the Great Depression, farmers are going to be hit extremely hard, all right? Especially around the Great Plains area, because what happens is they have these huge dust storms that come, and they blow away all the good topsoil. There are some background causes leading to it, but if you were a farmer and you made your living growing in the land, okay, this pretty much ruined any chance you had of making a living. All right, so just a couple more pictures here. You can see, I mean, we're talking severe damage. All right, and it ruined the crops. It destroyed homes, destroyed cars, just did a lot of overall damage. All right, so here are some of the causes. Right, the weather changes. Obviously, we got a period of severe drought on the Great Plains, which is going to be a lack of rainfall or precipitation. But here are the 2 causes. All right, first one is over-farming in the 1920s. Remember we talked about during World War I, farmers were growing a lot in order to kind of meet the demand that was created during World War I. Well, they continued to do it all throughout World War II. So they used up all of that good topsoil. They really didn't try and use any conservation methods to protect the soil. Another one was overgrazing. Right, that would be cattle giving free rein, eating all the soil. Essentially, how this really impacted the soil was the roots of grass is going to protect all the good soil from blowing away. So if you get rid of the grass and you get rid of the roots, the soil is now exposed. So these massive windstorms came and just picked that dirt up and sent it flying all across the Great Plains. All right, it becomes known as the Dust Bowl, the area that's hit particularly the hardest. You can see the map down here. The red is going to be severe damage. The yellow is going to be damaged as well. All right, and then pretty much all of those states, including the brown around the outside, they're all going to be referred to as the Dust Bowl. Right, you can kind of see it's this area right in the center of the country. It really doesn't spread any further after that. And if you're also looking at it from a geographical perspective, right, what do they not have a lot of that maybe would protect them from the wind? Right, that would be hills and mountains. So out on the Great Plains, they don't have anything like that to protect the farmland from the wind. Right. Now this map is important because it kind of relates to one of the things we're talking about, at least with Section 2 in terms of unemployment. But if you are a farmer living in the Great Plains, you realize that you did not have a future in farming. So you packed up your stuff and you left. So if you look down here where it says migration routes, I know when we see the word migration, we think of birds, but we had the Great Migration where the African Americans were moving from the south to the north. Now we have the Dust Bowl migration where farmers were leaving the Dust Bowl and moving to these other states looking for jobs. And really California is going to be the most popular destination. All right, so here again, here's another picture. Remember, at any time if you have a question, right, just hit the space bar and pause it, jot the question down on the side. We could always talk about it in our next work day. If you want to look at pictures again or maps again, obviously you can just go back. Right, so there's another one. You can see the damage. It's not just one big dust storm. There's lots of dust storms coming and going, so that's why it looks like it's been damaged already. All right, so here's the whole idea. If we remember from Leah's Pony, we talked about how the neighbors packed their stuff up and they took off. All right, this is the same idea. All right, you're looking at millions of people leaving the Dust Bowl area and moving to other states, and it's going to create a lot of resentment because the people already living in those states, right, they're going to be very unhappy with the massive influx of people. So you had farmers that literally took everything they owned and piled it into their cars and set out looking for a new life. And we had talked about in Section 2, a lot of people got it correct on your work pack. Right? Why was there such a population change during the Great Depression? Because people were leaving their homes and looking for work. Right? You moved, you went where the jobs were. Right? This is probably one of the most famous pictures of the Great Depression. This one down here, right? The migrant mother. right? And it really kind of, Dorothea Lange was a photographer, and she traveled the country during the Great Depression, okay? And that picture really kind of captured the essence or the negative feelings associated with the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, all right? Families lived in these little, these little shelters, all right? And they, like I said, they packed all their belongings. They traveled from place to place. They were, like I said, called migrant workers because they moved from one place to another looking for work. Right, and that picture kind of hit home all across the country to show people the impact, specifically the Dust Bowl, but more generally speaking, the Great Depression had on the American people. All right, just a couple other pictures here. You can see, it's obviously not the best of times for a lot of these people. Everybody was suffering, not just the adults that didn't have jobs, but the children as well. Right, so now we're kind of looking at how far the New Deal reaches. We said the one big problem that government's trying to change is unemployment. How can we get people working? If we can get them working, we can put some money in their pockets. Maybe they'll spend some money, which allows businesses to make a profit and maybe expand some more. Right, but simply jobs just aren't there at the time. So families had to rely on donations and charities from churches and other organizations. We had a picture of the men waiting online for the bread lines. Okay, because they were unemployed and they didn't have enough money. Some families had to live on the streets because they didn't have any homes. Right, here's the picture again of the people waiting on the bread lines for donations, kind of like soup kitchens. But you're looking at, if you're looking at the dress and the clothes, right, these are businessmen who have nothing left, and that's the only way they're going to be able to get food is from the bread lines. Right, now we're looking specifically at women and children. Right, now this is something that maybe hits home with you guys. This is a teenage boy here. Right, they actually attempted to get jobs to try and help their families. When they realized that there weren't jobs here, they started doing what's called train hopping, right, where you'd sneak onto the train and travel to wherever the jobs are. So you had, hundreds of thousands of teenage, boys and girls traveling the country, right, looking for work in order to be able to help their family. All right, and then we know that throughout the 1920s, some women go to work, right? But when the Great Depression occurs, they're going to start feeling some social pressure, that they should be giving up their jobs and going home in order to free up those jobs for the men. So that's going to create some tension as well. Right, here we go, looking at the culture. I told you about Batman and Superman. Okay, the whole idea was how can we give them, we were talking about financial relief. Okay, now we're looking at some emotional relief. How can we make the American people during the Great Depression, feel better about themselves? So you start seeing, Hollywood starts to boom here, and Vegas, people going and watching movies and shows, right? The radio, watching and listening to, major sports heroes, things like that. So Superman and Batman are the two big ones. You can see the year up here. It says May 1939 on the Batman comics. Okay, most people don't know that they both originated or both were created during the Great Depression for that reason. All right, and then a couple other programs. All right, the Works Progress Administration, that was one of Roosevelt's New Deal programs. This was aimed at trying to help writers and artists, try and make a living. They started to paint murals in post offices and banks and other government businesses. Two famous movies that come out during the Great Depression, Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. If you've ever seen either of those movies, they're kind of like these big, sweeping epics. Right, they show the main character going through some adversity, but ultimately they're able to be victorious. Right, and the whole idea was, the Great Depression is some adversity. Right, there is hope. Things will get better. All right, famous book. Skip right over it. Sorry. Famous book during the Great Depression is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. All right, that showed the struggle of migrant workers during the Great Depression. All right, now we're looking at some of the changes. We talked about FDR appeals to African Americans and the poor, right? And then this is based on our letters to Eleanor that we were talking about, right? She travels the country, particularly because FDR is so bogged down in Washington, D.C., trying to get his New Deal programs passed. She actually travels the country trying to get support for her husband's programs.